welcome back to STL TV Live. I'm Christia Parker. Now joining me in the studio is author Joe Schwartz. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now you have a book with a very, very interesting title.
Well, thank you.
The Games Men Play, right?
That's correct.
Tell us a little bit about the book and what inspired you to write it.
Well, what inspires me to write in general is St. Louis. I'm a son of St. Louis. I've lived here 90% of my life. I spent a little time in Colorado, a little time in Louisiana, and I was an Army brat for some time, and I met people from all over the United States, but the most interesting people I've ever known are St. Louisans. They all each have a unique and special story. I've lived all over the city and in the county areas. Right now I'm a resident of High Ridge, and I just see these different types of people our area seems to hold. And I take stories I hear at random on the news or just things I imagine might happen, you know, and I see this sounds interesting. I keep working it over, and I start putting together a story. And The Games Men Play is just a loose conglomeration of all those things, 21 short stories just featuring the city of St. Louis. And what I really like to do is I like to get past, you know, the headline news, you know, 4 people found murdered in an alley. Well, how did they get murdered? Who murdered them? Why would someone do something so hideous? And that's where the inspiration for a lot of my story writing comes from.
So all of your stories are based on events that happen in St. Louis or people in St. Louis?
It's my interpretation sometimes of events. There was a story a few months ago about a young man just minding his own business, walking home, and he was shot to death. Just at random, it was a random act of violence. And that's really all I heard about it. And I really wondered about that young kid, because they said he was a junior and he was really excellent student, and he'd been on his way to a scholarship in sports. And I wondered how his dad would have felt. And if I was his dad, how would I have felt? I have young sons that I'd like to see grow up to be, you know, productive young men someday. And how would I feel if someone had snatched my child's life away from, you know, and this desire for possibly for not only for revenge, but the whole disassociation that's going on in one's own mind, trying to cope with the loss of a child and also trying to extract some sort of biblical revenge upon people, and knowing you're going to be taking the life of someone else's sons too.
Right, right. Now, how many of these stories are actually your stories? Are any of your life events brought to life in the book?
I write strictly fiction. I mean, I leave little bits of myself in a story here and there that maybe someone would find curious, or they'd be able to say, oh, that's really something that happened to you. Well, okay, maybe a little bit of that is very, very minuscule little amounts. There's a story in the book about a young man whose mother and father are divorced. Well, my mother and father are divorced, and I know the feeling of a kid who's 13 years old and trying to figure out, you know, where's dad? You know, why doesn't he come around anymore? You know, mom gets a new boyfriend. How do you handle that? And you know, and I even wrote the story strictly because my brother-in-law, he said, would you please write something my 13-year-old daughter can read, because I seem to use a tad bit of vulgarity in my writing. So yeah, I wrote it specifically for her. It's completely free of any curse words whatsoever. So even a child can read some of my work.
Right. Now talk about the collection. It's a series of short stories. What kind of short stories? Are they all like crime stories, or? A
big motivation for me is the point of view of a criminal, and how it is that they're seeing this, or the disenfranchised. There's a story in the book called And the Winner Is, and it's about a gentleman who happens to be homeless, and he finds a lottery ticket in the gutter, like we see 1,000 lottery tickets thrown in the gutter, and decides, for reasons beyond his own control, just some sort of intuition, to walk miles away to a convenience store and have it scanned. And lo and behold, yes, it's a winner, but in the end, he decides a bigger reward is to pass that ticket along. And that's the kind of writing I like to do. I like to do this sort of a point of view, very quick, very much a punch to your gut that leaves the reader dizzy, wanting more, hoping, you know, for the best for the situation. They're not all, you know, bullets and blood and, you know, drug dealing, but there are quite a few.
Right. And you guys, he's leaving us with a lot more. We're going to have a lot more coming up with Joe. You guys don't want to miss it. You're going to find out where you can find this book, The Games Men Play. It's actually on the screen right there. You can go to Amazon.com if you can't wait. We got a lot more to talk about with Joe, you guys. Remember to keep up with STL TV and all the great events going on around St. Louis. You can friend us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can always catch us streaming live at STLTV.net. We'll be right back.